shark arm, murders. In early 1935, Coogee Aquarium and swimming baths in Sydney, Australia were floundering. The world was in the middle of the Great Depression, and the aquarium's owner, Bert Hobson, needed something to attract customers. His spirits were lifted when he and his son caught a 14-foot, 1-ton tiger shark off the coast and put it in their pool. There had been numerous shark attacks in the area, and Hobson thought it was the perfect thing to save his business. About a week after catching the shark and in front of crowds of families, the shark began to convulse and vomit, spitting up a rat, a bird, and a human arm. Hobson called the police, and they fished out the arm, which had a tattoo of 2 boxers fighting, which was located inside the forearm. The shark was killed, and the stomach was cut open to look for any other remains, but none were found. Using new fingerprint technology, they were able to identify the arm's original operator to 45-year-old Jimmy Smith, who had been missing since April 7, 1935. Early investigations into Smith's disappearance and shark consumption led police to a Sydney businessman named Reginald William Lloyd Holmes. Holmes was a smuggler who also ran a successful family boat building business at Lavender Bay, New South Wales. Holmes had employed Smith several times to work insurance scams, including one in 1934, in which an overinsured pleasure cruiser named Pathfinder was sunk. Shortly afterward, the pair began a partnership with Patrick Francis Brady, an ex-serviceman and convicted forger. With signatures from Holmes' friends and clients provided by the boat tycoon, Brady would forge checks for small amounts against their bank accounts, which he and Smith then cashed. Police were later able to figure out that Smith had been blackmailing Holmes. Smith was last seen drinking and playing cards with Patrick Francis Brady at the Cecil Hotel in southern Sydney after telling his wife he was going fishing. Brady had rented a small cottage at the time Smith went missing. Police alleged that Smith was murdered at this cottage. Port Hacking and Gunnamatta Bay were searched by the Australian Navy and the Air Force, but the rest of Smith's body was never found. The body on Summerton Beach. In December 1948, a body was found on Summerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia. The body was a man who was dressed impeccably in a suit with polished shoes, and his head was slumped against a wall. Authorities thought the cause of death was heart failure, or more likely poisoning, but no trace of poison was found in the autopsy. There wasn't a wallet or any type of identification on the man, and all the tags from his clothing were cut out. The fingerprints that the authorities took of him were also unidentifiable. They even put a photo of the body in the newspapers, and still, no one could identify who the man was. 4 months later, after the body was found, detectives found a hidden pocket that was sewn on the inside of his trousers. Inside the pocket was a rolled-up piece of paper from a rare book called the Rubaiyat. The piece of paper had the words "Tamam Shud" on it, which means it has ended. After months of looking for the exact book, authorities decided to bury the Summerton man without identification, although a cast was taken of the bust and he was embalmed to preserve him. 8 months later, a man walked into the police station. He claimed that just after the body was found, he found a copy of the Rubaiyat in the back of his car that he kept parked near Summerton Beach. He thought nothing of it until he read about the search in a newspaper article. Sure enough, the book had a part of the final page that was torn, and it matched the piece of paper that was found in the Summerton man's trousers. Inside the book were a phone number and some sort of strange code. The phone number led the authorities to a woman named Jessica Thompson who lived nearby. During her interview, she was very evasive and even claimed she was going to faint when she saw the bust of the Summerton man, but denied knowing him. However, she said she did sell the book to a man named Alfred Boxall. Unfortunately, Alfred Boxall was still very much alive at the time and still had the copy of the Rubaiyat that Jessica had sold him. The code that was found ended up being even more unhelpful, and as of today, it is still yet to be cracked. The Jameson family disappearance. On Oct. 8, 2009, The Jameson family, 44-year-old Bobby Dale, 40-year-old Sherilyn Leanne, and their 6-year-old daughter Madison Stormy Star were seen for the last time before vanishing without a trace. The family lived in Eufaula, Oklahoma, and was last seen by a man who lived in the mountains in southeastern Oklahoma. However, the witness claimed that he only saw the family and no one else in that area during the time. The Jamesons were there to view a 40-acre plot of land that they were looking to purchase. They were looking to live in a shipping container that they had already been living in on their plot of land in Eufaula. On Oct. 8 days after the Jamesons were last seen alive, the first major discovery in the case occurred. Hunters in a remote location in the woods, about a quarter-mile away from the last spot the Jamesons were seen, discovered the Jamesons' abandoned truck, which was still locked. Inside the truck, investigators found Bobby's wallet, Sherilyn's purse, jackets, a GPS, Bobby's cell phone, $32,000 cash in a bank bag, and the Jamesons' pet dog, Maisie, who was incredibly malnourished but still alive. Bobby's cell phone had a picture of Madison, and it is believed to have been taken the day before they disappeared. The truck showed no evidence of any kind of struggle. Former Sheriff Beauchamp remarked, "I think they were forced to stop and got out of the truck to meet with someone they recognized, and I think they either left willingly or by force." The GPS unit in the truck indicated that the family had been farther up a nearby hill, prior to the location where the truck and belongings were found. Investigators followed the coordinates and found footprints. One day later, on Oct. 17, 300 people, including authorities and volunteers, staged a large-scale air and ground search party. But unfortunately, any leads went cold, and the search for the Jamesons was called off. On Nov. 16, 2013, hunters were scouting for deer hunting locations when they found partial skeletal remains of 3 bodies, 2 adults and 1 child. The remains were found less than 3 miles from where the Jameson family had parked their truck 4 years earlier. The search uncovered shoe, bits of clothing, adult teeth, an adult arm and leg bone, and bone fragments. The bones would eventually be confirmed as the missing Jameson family. However, no cause of death was determined, and the circumstances surrounding their disappearance remain unknown. The Watcher House. In June 2014, Maria and Derek Broaddus and their 3 young children were getting ready to move into their new home, 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. They claimed the 6-bedroom house was their dream home, and located just a couple of blocks away from Maria's childhood home in one of the top 30th safest cities in the United States. 3 days after closing the sale, before the Broaddus family had even begun to move in, a letter arrived in their new mailbox. The letter was addressed to the new owner in big, clunky handwriting. The typed letter read as follows: "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one." The letter also mentioned specifics about the Broaddus family. "You have children. I have seen them," the letter continued. "So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call them and draw them to me." At the bottom of the letter, the author used a cursive font to sign the Watcher. After receiving the letter, the Broaddus family reached out to the previous family who had sold them the house, John and Andre Woods. They stated that during the 23 years of living at 657 Boulevard, they had never received a letter like that, except once a few days before they were getting ready to move out of the house. The Woods family also stated they had never felt watched in the 2 decades they had lived at the house, and in fact rarely felt the need to lock their door at night. While they thought the note they received was odd, they threw the note away without much concern. Still, the 2 families went to the police with the letter, and an investigation was opened. The police warned the families not to tell anyone about the letters, including their neighbors who were now all suspects. 2 weeks later, even though the Broaddus family still hadn't moved in, they received a second letter with even more chilling specifics about the family, including the children's birth order and nicknames. The watcher also asked, "Will the children sleep in the attic? Or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I will know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better." Several weeks later, the Broaddus family had put their plans on hold to move in. A third letter arrived saying, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." By the end of 2014, the case had stalled. There was no digital trail, and the mental effects were taking a toll on the Broaddus family. There were no fingerprints and no way to place somebody at the scene of the crime. Only 6 months after they received the letters, they decided to sell the home. 657 Boulevard has been sold and is currently off the market while the watcher's identity still remains a mystery.